Welcome to Part 2, The Silent Client. Please watch Part 1. The link is in the description box below, and do not forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates of new stories. Chapter 12, The Hidden Enemy. Evelyn's heart pounded as she pulled into the parking garage, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. She had barely been able to sleep the past few nights. Too many questions, too many threats, and a constant sense that someone was always watching her. Her mind raced with everything she had uncovered. The silent witness, the corrupt network that had infiltrated every layer of society, the names and dates that had connected the dots. But now she was close. She could feel it. Samuel had sent her a cryptic message earlier that day. "Meet me. I have something you need to see." That was all. She had learned not to ask too many questions. Samuel had been her only ally in this war, and if he had information, she would take it, no matter what it meant. The dim lights in the parking garage flickered overhead as Evelyn parked her car and stepped out. Her heels echoed loudly in the silence of the empty space, each step a reminder that she was far from safe. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting someone to be following her, but there was no one. The shadows in the corner seemed deeper than they should have been, and Evelyn felt the familiar sense of being watched again. But she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. She walked quickly toward the elevator, her steps quickening as the feeling of unease crept up her spine. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped inside, pressing the button for the top floor. Samuel had always preferred the upper levels, quiet, secluded, away from prying eyes. He had a way of disappearing when things got dangerous, and Evelyn had learned to trust him, even when she had no other choice. When the elevator stopped, Evelyn stepped out into the dimly lit hallway. She could feel the tension building as she approached Samuel's office. The door was slightly ajar, the faint light spilling out into the hallway. She pushed it open, her breath caught in her throat. Samuel was standing by the window, his back to her. His posture was tense, rigid, as though he was waiting for something. When he turned, his face was hard to read, grim as always, but now there was something else in his eyes. Something she hadn't seen before. "Evelyn," he said quietly, his voice low, almost strained. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. Where have you been?" Evelyn took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I've been busy, but I came because you said you had something for me. Something I need to see." Samuel nodded, a shadow crossing his face. "I do, but before we go any further, there's something you need to understand." Evelyn felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She could see the conflict in his eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "I'm not here for games, Samuel. What's going on?" Samuel hesitated for a long moment, his hand gripping the edge of the desk. Finally, he spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "There's more to this than you realize, Evelyn. The people we're up against are not just businessmen and politicians. They're connected to the very institutions you trust. Law enforcement, the courts, even the FBI. These people, they have eyes everywhere." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. "You're saying the conspiracy goes all the way to the top?" Samuel's eyes darkened. "It's worse than that. The people behind this aren't just trying to control the system. They've been manipulating it for years, shaping it to fit their needs. And they've been doing it under the radar. No one knows just how deep this goes." Evelyn's mind raced. She had suspected as much, but hearing it from Samuel made it all too real. If the conspiracy had infiltrated law enforcement and the government, there was nowhere left to turn. Who could she trust? "I've been digging for a while now," Samuel continued, his voice softer. "But even I didn't know how far-reaching this network really was. They've infiltrated every level of power, Evelyn. Every level." Evelyn stepped forward, her breath catching. "Then what do we do? How do we stop them?" Samuel didn't answer right away. He stepped over to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder thick with documents. He handed it to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "This is the list of the key players. The people who are at the top of this conspiracy. But there's more. The silent witness. The person who's been watching everything from the shadows. They've been kept hidden for a reason. The people we're up against know the power they hold. And if we expose them, they'll destroy us." Evelyn's pulse quickened as she flipped through the documents. The names were familiar. Politicians she had seen on the news, judges she had respected, even law enforcement officials she had worked with. She felt sick as she read through each one. The corruption was deep, too deep. There was no way to fight it from the outside. These people were untouchable. "And what about Marissa?" Evelyn asked, her voice quiet. "She's the key, right? The silent witness?" What do we do about her? Samuel's gaze darkened. Marissa is dangerous. She's been running from them for years. If she's still alive, it's because she's been in hiding. She's the one person who knows everything, and they've been trying to find her for years. Evelyn felt the weight of his words. Then what are we waiting for? We have to find her. She's the key to everything. Samuel looked at her for a long moment, his expression hardening. I've been trying to find her for a long time. But someone else is looking for her, too. Someone who won't stop until she's dead. And if you go after her, you'll be walking straight into the heart of the storm. Evelyn's hands tightened around the folder. She knew the risks, but she couldn't stop now. Marissa Davenport was the key to everything, and she wouldn't let anyone, no matter how powerful, stand in her way. I'm not afraid anymore, Evelyn said, her voice unwavering. I'll find her. I'll expose everything. I'm done running. Samuel watched her for a moment, and then, with a sigh, he nodded. I'm with you, but we have to move carefully. If we're going to take them down, we need to stay one step ahead. Evelyn didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She could feel it in her bones. The fight was just beginning. Chapter 13. The Final Confrontation. The weight of the folder in Evelyn's hand felt heavier than ever as she sat in her car, parked a few blocks away from her next destination. The documents Samuel had given her revealed everything she needed to know. The players in this game, the ones who had orchestrated the conspiracy. Their names, their positions, and their connections were all laid out before her. But there was one thing missing: Marissa Davenport. The woman who had been hiding in plain sight, the woman who held the key to the entire operation. Evelyn's thoughts were a whirlwind. The pieces of the puzzle were all there, but they didn't make sense until she found Marissa. Samuel had warned her that Marissa was in hiding for a reason, that the people behind this conspiracy would stop at nothing to protect her. But Evelyn couldn't stop now. Too many lives had already been ruined, too many people had been silenced. She had to finish what her father had started. She had to expose them all. The rain had begun to fall again, soft and steady, a rhythmic tapping against the windshield. Evelyn's mind was focused, her heart set on the path ahead. The danger wasn't just external anymore. It had become personal. She had been a part of the system, had worked for it, trusted it. But now she understood. The very system she had been defending was the same system that had allowed this corruption to thrive. She was no longer a bystander. She was a fighter. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her from her thoughts. She pulled it out, the message from Samuel lighting up the screen. I found something. Meet me at the safe house. It's urgent. Evelyn's pulse quickened. If Samuel had found something, it could be the breakthrough she was looking for. She didn't waste any time. She started the engine and sped off toward the location he had given her. The safe house was located on the outskirts of the city, a nondescript building tucked away behind rows of other equally forgettable structures. It had been carefully chosen, hidden in plain sight. When Evelyn arrived, she parked at the back of the building, as instructed. The street was eerily quiet, with only the occasional flicker of a street lamp illuminating the otherwise empty road. Samuel was already waiting for her when she entered the safe house. His expression was tense, his eyes dark with exhaustion. He looked up as she entered, his gaze piercing. There was something different in his demeanor tonight, something that suggested the gravity of the situation had finally caught up with him. You're here, Samuel said, his voice low. Good. I was starting to worry. Evelyn stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. It was modest, furniture thrown together in haste, the bare essentials. She didn't need luxury. She needed answers. What did you find? She asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Samuel handed her a folder, similar to the one he had given her earlier, but this one was different. The papers inside were marked with a red stamp, confidential, and there were notes scribbled all over them. Evelyn flipped through the pages quickly, her eyes scanning the information. What she saw made her stomach drop. It's not just a conspiracy, Samuel said quietly, watching her as she processed the information. It's a full-scale operation. They've been laundering money, covering up murders, and controlling the media for years. But there's something even darker. They've been using the legal system to imprison anyone who threatens their agenda. And the worst part, they have connections to law enforcement, the very people we trust to protect us. Evelyn felt the world shift beneath her feet. This wasn't just about bringing down a few corrupt businessmen or politicians. It was about everything she had believed in, everything she had fought for. The legal system, the justice she had spent her career fighting for, had been twisted into something unrecognizable. The very foundation of society was crumbling. Who's behind it? Evelyn asked, her voice tight with disbelief. Not just one person, Samuel replied. It's a network, a web of corruption. But there is one person at the top, one person who's been orchestrating everything. Their identity is hidden, but we're getting closer. Evelyn's mind raced. She had to know. Who? Who's the mastermind behind all of this? Samuel didn't answer immediately. He hesitated, looking down at the floor as though he was choosing his words carefully. Finally, he looked up at her, his face grim. It's someone close to you, Evelyn. Her heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She demanded. Who? Samuel's eyes met hers, filled with an undeniable intensity. It's Richard Gale. Evelyn felt the air leave her lungs. Richard Gale? Her mentor? The man who had guided her throughout her career? She had trusted him. He had been the one person she thought she could rely on, the one person who had always been there for her. I don't understand, Evelyn stammered, her mind struggling to process the words. Richard? But he's one of the good ones. He's helped me. He's been working with me on this case. Samuel's expression didn't change. I wish I could say it wasn't true, but it is. Richard Gale has been playing both sides. He's been feeding them information, and he's been using you to get closer to the silent witness. He knows you're getting too close, and he's the one who's been feeding them everything about your investigation. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Richard had been her mentor, her guide, and now he was the one pulling the strings behind her back. She had trusted him more than anyone. But now the truth was undeniable. Richard had been part of the conspiracy all along. Where is he now? Evelyn asked, her voice hard with a mixture of anger and disbelief. I don't know, Samuel replied. But we need to find him. He's the final piece of this puzzle. Once we expose him, the entire operation will come crumbling down. Evelyn felt her heart race as she processed the gravity of the situation. Richard Gale, the man who had helped shape her career, was at the heart of the conspiracy. He had manipulated her, used her, all while pretending to be her ally. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had ever experienced. But Evelyn was done being manipulated. We'll find him, Evelyn said, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. We'll expose him, and then we'll take down everyone he's working with. Samuel nodded, his expression solemn. But we have to move quickly. They know we're on to them, and they won't wait much longer to silence us. Evelyn stood up, the weight of the decision settling in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was fighting for her life. Richard Gale had been the one person she trusted the most. But now he was the enemy, and Evelyn wasn't about to let him, or anyone else, stand in her way. Chapter 14, Breaking the Chains. Evelyn couldn't sleep. The revelation about Richard Gale had turned her world upside down, leaving her mind spinning with questions and doubts. For years, she had trusted him. He had been her mentor, guiding her through the toughest cases and offering advice when she needed it most. But now, she realized it had all been a lie, a carefully constructed facade to hide his true allegiance. As the rain fell steadily outside her window, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, her eyes glued to the folder Samuel had handed her. Inside were more details about the conspiracy, more names, more connections. Richard Gale's involvement was only the beginning. The more she read, the more it became clear. These people were everywhere. They had their fingers in every pie, controlling everything from the media to the legal system. No one was safe from their influence, not even her. She rubbed her eyes, trying to clear the exhaustion from her mind. Every document she read felt like a step closer to the truth, but it also felt like a step closer to danger. These people weren't just manipulating the system. They were the system. If Evelyn exposed them, there would be no turning back. But that wasn't a choice. She had already come too far. She glanced at her phone, checking the time. It was past midnight. Samuel had told her to stay put for the time being, to lie low and avoid drawing attention to herself. But Evelyn knew that time was running out. She had to act. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. Grabbing her jacket and the folder, Evelyn stepped out of the apartment, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The city was quiet at this hour, the streets nearly deserted, save for the occasional car that passed by. But the silence was unsettling. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable to happen. The safe house was only a short drive away. Samuel had given her the address earlier, a place hidden from prying eyes. She had trusted him up until now, and he had always delivered. But now, She couldn't shake the feeling that he was just as much a part of the conspiracy as Richard. He had been involved with her father's investigation, and though he had helped her, there was always a lingering question. What did he really know? The drive was uneventful, the streets wet from the rain, the tires of her car slicing through the water with a soft hiss. When she arrived at the safe house, she parked around the corner and walked the remaining distance on foot, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. She had been too careless before. She couldn't afford to make that mistake again. As she approached the building, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The message was from an unknown number. "You're getting closer, but it's too late. You can't stop this now." Evelyn stopped in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. She knew who it was, the same people who had been watching her for weeks. They were playing a game, and she was the pawn. But she wasn't going to be their victim. Not this time. She quickly deleted the message and tucked the phone away, her hand steady as she reached for the door of the safe house. Inside, the place was quiet, too quiet. The dim light from a single lamp cast long shadows on the walls. Samuel was nowhere to be found. "Samuel?" Evelyn called, her voice echoing through the empty space. There was no answer. She moved cautiously through the room, her senses alert to every sound, every shift in the air. It felt wrong, like something was off. She had trusted Samuel, but now doubts crept in. What if he was a part of this all along? What if he had been manipulating her, using her to uncover the conspiracy, only to have her lead the way for them to silence her? She reached for the door to the back room and stopped, her heart hammering in her chest. Something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar. Without thinking, she pushed it open, her breath catching in her throat. The room was empty, but there on the desk in the corner was a file. The same type of file Samuel had given her, but this one was different. This one had her name on it. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a detailed report, her entire investigation laid out in black and white. Her father's notes, the names of the people she had uncovered, and more. But there was something else. A note at the bottom of the last page, written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. "You've been playing the wrong game. The truth will not set you free. It will destroy you." Evelyn's stomach dropped. She had been too careful, too cautious. She had thought she was one step ahead, but now she realized she had been walking into a trap. They had been monitoring her every move. And now it was too late to turn back. The sound of footsteps from behind her made her freeze. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the gun she had stashed in her bag. But it was Samuel. His face was pale, his eyes filled with something unreadable. "I told you to stay away," he said, his voice hoarse. "I told you it was too dangerous." Evelyn's heart pounded as she took a step back, the file still clutched in her hand. "You've been watching me this entire time, haven't you?" she demanded. "You knew what was happening. You knew what I was uncovering. And now you want to stop me." Samuel didn't move, his face still and emotionless. "I'm not trying to stop you. I'm trying to protect you. But you don't understand. If you expose them, if you keep digging, they'll destroy everything. They'll destroy you." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "You've been a part of this from the beginning, haven't you?" Her voice shook with the realization. "You've been feeding them information. You've been using me." Samuel's expression softened, but there was no apology in his eyes. "I had no choice, Evelyn. I've been in this longer than you know. And I've tried to protect you. But you can't fight them. You can't win." Evelyn shook her head, her grip on the file tightening. "I've already won. I'm not going to back down. Not now. Not after everything I've lost." Samuel stepped forward, his face filled with regret. "Then you're already dead." And just like that, everything Evelyn had fought for came crashing down. The walls she had been so carefully building, the trust she had placed in Samuel, had been shattered. The conspiracy wasn't just something she could expose. It was something that would consume her, body and soul, if she wasn't careful. And now she realized it was too late to go back. Chapter 15, The Enemy Within. The silence that followed Samuel's words hung in the air, thick with tension. Evelyn's mind reeled, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of everything Samuel had just confessed. He had been a part of the conspiracy all along, feeding information to the very people she was fighting against. But why? What had driven him to betray her? To betray her father? "I didn't want this." Samuel's voice broke through the quiet, his expression pained. "But I was in too deep. They had control over everything. You don't understand, Evelyn. This isn't just about you or me. It's about something bigger. You've been too focused on exposing them, but that's not how it works. If you expose them, they'll come for everyone you love. Evelyn's anger surged, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wasn't going to let him manipulate her again. You think I don't understand? You think I don't know how dangerous this is? My father died because of this. He died because he was trying to stop them. And you, she stopped herself, her voice breaking. She couldn't let the emotion take over. Not now. You were part of it, Samuel. You were supposed to be the one person I could trust. Samuel's eyes filled with regret, but it did nothing to change the truth. I never meant to hurt you, Evelyn. You have to believe me. They threatened everything. My family. My career. You think I wanted to be a part of this? You think I wanted to watch you get dragged into it? Evelyn shook her head, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Then why didn't you come to me sooner? Why didn't you warn me? I couldn't, Samuel said quietly. The moment I crossed them, I became a target. I did what I could to protect you, but I was running out of options. I thought if I could help you piece it together, maybe we could fight back. But I see now I was wrong. You're too close to the truth. They'll stop at nothing to silence you. Evelyn took a step back, her mind racing. Samuel's words had torn through the foundation of everything she had believed. He had been feeding information to the conspiracy, using her as a pawn in their game. And now, he was telling her it was too late to fight back? You're not a victim, Samuel, she said, her voice cold. You made a choice. You chose to be a part of this. You chose to lie to me. And now you want to tell me I'm too close to the truth? You've been in this world for years, and you're telling me I can't win? That I should back down? Samuel looked down at the floor, his jaw tight. I'm telling you the truth, Evelyn. I'm telling you what's going to happen if you keep pushing. They'll come for you, and they won't stop until they destroy everything you've built. They'll take you down. They'll take everyone down. I'm not backing down, Evelyn said firmly. She wasn't going to let Samuel's words shake her resolve. I won't let them win. My father died fighting this system, and I'm not going to let his death be in vain. I'm going to expose them, Samuel. I'm going to bring them down. Samuel's eyes widened with fear. You don't get it. They'll make sure you don't get the chance. You'll be gone before you can even get close. Evelyn stood still for a moment, staring at him, letting his words sink in. It was true that the conspiracy had control over the courts, the media, even the law enforcement. But Evelyn wasn't about to let them dictate the terms of her life. She had already lost too much to walk away now. You're wrong, she said quietly, but with more resolve than she had ever felt. You think I'm going to back down because of a threat? I've already lost everything. My father, my career, my life as I knew it. I'm not going to lose myself, too. Samuel didn't answer. He simply watched her with a mixture of fear and guilt in his eyes. Evelyn could see the conflict in him, the torn loyalty that had once bound them together. But she couldn't afford to feel sympathy now. The stakes were too high. You're going to help me, Evelyn said, her voice unwavering. You're going to help me take them down. Samuel shook his head. I can't. I've already told you too much. They'll be watching me now. If I help you, I'm signing my death warrant. Evelyn's eyes hardened. She was done playing games. She didn't have time for this. Then I'll do it alone. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Samuel flinched, but he didn't speak. Evelyn could see the fear in his eyes. He had already made his choice, and now it was her turn. With one last look at Samuel, Evelyn turned and walked toward the door. She wasn't going to wait around any longer. If Samuel couldn't help her, she would find another way. She was done being afraid. She stepped out into the cold night air, her mind clear for the first time in days. She had a target now. She had a purpose. But as she walked down the street, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart racing when she saw the message. You're too late. We've found you. Evelyn froze, her eyes scanning the dark street around her. The feeling that had been haunting her for days, the feeling that someone was watching her, was now undeniable. She wasn't alone. She turned quickly, but the street was empty. The shadows stretched long and ominous. Another message came through. It's over, Evelyn. You've crossed the line. You'll never finish this. Evelyn's blood ran cold. The network had been watching her. They knew everything. But she wasn't going to back down now. Not when she was so close to the truth. She was the last one standing in their way, and they were coming for her. But Evelyn Moore wasn't afraid. She had nothing left to lose. Chapter 16, The Collapse. The text message was simple, direct. It's over, Evelyn. You've crossed the line. You'll never finish this. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, her phone clenched tightly in her hand. The words seemed to blur together as she stared at the screen. They knew. They had been watching her from the beginning. They had allowed her to get this far, only to draw her in like a fly caught in a web. The familiar panic began to crawl up her spine. This wasn't just about a murder case anymore. This was a war. And she was the target. The people who had orchestrated this whole conspiracy had played their cards carefully, pulling strings from the shadows. They had manipulated everyone she had ever trusted, Samuel, Claire, Richard Gale, into playing their roles in the grand scheme. But now they were after her. She could feel it in her bones. The rain started again, a steady drizzle that made the world around her feel darker and more oppressive. She looked down the empty street, her mind racing. They were coming for her, and it was only a matter of time before they made their move. Her father's words came back to her. You'll never be able to trust anyone. You'll have to fight this battle alone. He had been right. She was alone now, but that didn't mean she would lose. She couldn't afford to lose. She glanced over at the safe house, a temporary refuge, a place that had kept her hidden for weeks, but now it felt more like a cage than a sanctuary. She could feel the danger closing in around her. The walls seemed to press in, the weight of the conspiracy growing heavier with every breath. She had to make a decision. She had to expose them, bring them down, or risk losing everything her father had fought for, and everything she had worked for. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, the message was more specific. We know where you are. You're out of time. The familiar fear began to tighten around her chest. They were moving in, circling like vultures. But she refused to be paralyzed by it. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. The truth was within her reach, and it was time to confront the beast head-on. Evelyn grabbed the folder with the names and connections, the map of the conspiracy that had consumed her life for the past few weeks. She had spent hours, days, poring over the documents, trying to find the missing link, the person who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. And now, she was closer than ever. But first, she needed to face the truth. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed the number she had been avoiding for days. The phone rang twice before the voice on the other end answered. Evelyn, the voice said, low and cautious. I didn't think you'd call. Samuel, Evelyn replied, her voice steady despite the tension that gripped her. We need to talk. There was a pause, followed by a sigh. I thought you would have figured it out by now, Samuel said, his voice tinged with regret. But you're still in the dark, Evelyn. You have no idea how deep this goes. I know enough, Evelyn said, her resolve hardening. You've been feeding me information from the beginning, but it's not enough. I need to know everything. I need to know who's behind this. Samuel hesitated, the silence on the other end stretching for several seconds. It's not that simple. You're not ready for this. The people you're up against. I'm not backing down, Evelyn interrupted, her voice firm. I don't care who they are. I need the truth. I need to know who's behind all of this. Who is controlling everything. I can't protect you anymore, Evelyn, Samuel said quietly, his voice thick with something she couldn't place. Guilt, maybe? You've been playing their game, and now they know everything. They're coming for you. You have to stop. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest, the fear clawing at her throat. I won't stop, she said, her voice resolute. I've already lost everything. My father, my career, my life as I knew it. I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to finish this. Another long pause. Samuel's voice broke through the silence, filled with finality. Then you're already dead, Evelyn. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had expected something like this, but hearing it from Samuel, someone she had trusted, was almost too much to bear. She could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the fear. He had known the cost of this fight, and now it was too late to back out. I'm not afraid of them, Evelyn said, her voice hard. I'll expose them, Samuel. I'll bring them down. Samuel sighed heavily. You don't understand. They're untouchable. They've been running this game for years. If you push them too far, they'll destroy everything you've worked for. They'll take everything from you. I've already lost everything, Evelyn said softly, the weight of her words settling over her like a blanket. What's left for them to take? There was no answer. Samuel's silence spoke volumes. He knew the truth, and he knew that Evelyn was already beyond the point of no return. I'm going after the heart of this conspiracy, Evelyn continued, her voice steady with resolve. I'll find Marissa. I'll expose them all. And nothing you say will stop me. The line clicked dead, the call ending abruptly. Evelyn stood there for a moment, the weight of the conversation sinking in. She had just burned the last bridge. Samuel had warned her. But it was too late to turn back now. She was already in too deep. The storm outside had picked up again, the sound of rain hitting the windows like a drumbeat, relentless and unforgiving. Evelyn knew that this was the moment. This was the point of no return. She had to finish this. She had to find Marissa Davenport, the silent witness. And when she did, she would expose the entire conspiracy, no matter the cost. But as she turned to leave the room, she heard something, a faint creak behind her. The sound of the door opening just a crack. Someone was here. Chapter 17, Shadows in the Dark. Evelyn's heart raced as she left the safe house, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the empty alley. The tension was suffocating, and every instinct in her screamed that danger was close. She wasn't safe anymore. The walls had closed in, and the shadows seemed to follow her wherever she went. She knew that the people behind this conspiracy weren't just going to let her walk away unscathed. They were coming for her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. It was the same number that had sent her the threatening texts earlier. "You're playing a dangerous game, Evelyn. You'll never finish this." Her hands tightened around the phone, but before she could respond, another message appeared. "You're too late. We've already made our move. The silent witness is ours." Evelyn froze. The silent witness. Marissa Davenport. The one person who held the key to everything. They had her. Her pulse quickened as panic surged through her. She had been so close. She had almost uncovered the full scope of the conspiracy. And now they had taken Marissa. The final piece. The key to everything. She had to act. She had no time to waste. Evelyn's mind raced with plans, each more dangerous than the last. She couldn't sit back and wait for them to come for her. She had to go after Marissa before it was too late. She had to find her. If they had her, then the stakes had just gotten higher. The conspiracy had moved faster than she anticipated, but that didn't mean it was over. As she made her way to the car, she knew she had to move quickly. The message was clear. They were onto her, and they weren't going to stop until they had eliminated the threat she posed. Evelyn slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, the sound of the car purring to life doing little to ease her racing thoughts. Her eyes scanned the streets, looking for any signs that she was being followed. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the world outside, making everything seem uncertain, just like her next move. Where was Marissa? Where had they taken her? Evelyn had a feeling she knew the answer. They had to be using her as leverage, hoping that Evelyn would back down. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when she was so close. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Samuel. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen before she answered. "Evelyn," Samuel's voice crackled through the line. "I know you're going after her, but you need to understand something. It's too late. They've already moved Marissa. We can't track her now." "No," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the static of the phone. "I'm not stopping. Not now. I'm going after her." Samuel sighed. "Evelyn, listen to me. You're walking into a trap. They want you to come after her. They'll use her to get to you. If you keep going, you won't make it out alive." Evelyn gripped the steering wheel harder, her knuckles turning white. "I'm not backing down, Samuel. I won't let them get away with this. I'll find her, and I'll expose everything. You're putting yourself in danger." "Don't do this," Samuel pleaded, his voice filled with urgency. But Evelyn was already past the point of no return. "I have no choice." The call ended abruptly, and Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Samuel had been a part of this from the beginning, and now, his warning felt like one last attempt to stop her. She didn't need his protection anymore. She needed answers. Her mind raced with possibilities as she sped through the rain-soaked streets. The familiar landscape of the city, now a maze of shadows and uncertainty. She couldn't afford to waste time. Marissa was out there somewhere, and she needed to find her before it was too late. As she neared the outskirts of the city, the dark silhouette of a warehouse came into view, hidden in the distance, far from the prying eyes of the public. It was isolated, abandoned, the perfect place to keep someone hidden. Evelyn's gut twisted as she realized this could be it, the place where Marissa was being kept. She parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way, keeping to the shadows. Her heart raced with every step. This was it. If she didn't act now, she might never get another chance. The rain had stopped, but the air felt thick with tension. Every sound felt amplified, and every creak of the building seemed to echo through the silence. The warehouse loomed ahead, its dark, rusted exterior showing signs of neglect. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she approached the door. It was slightly ajar, as if waiting for her. She paused just outside, listening for any movement inside. Everything felt too still, too quiet. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make the first move. Evelyn stepped inside, her footfall muffled by the dusty floor. She squinted through the dim light, her eyes scanning the space. There were crates and piles of old equipment scattered around, but no sign of Marissa. The silence was suffocating. "Marissa?" she called out softly, her voice barely a whisper. No answer. Her pulse quickened as she stepped further into the room. The air felt colder now, and every inch of her skin tingled with the sense that something was wrong. It was too quiet. She shouldn't have come alone. She should have waited for backup. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Evelyn spun around, her heart racing in her chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim light. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the shadows. "I knew you would come," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "But it's too late." Evelyn's mind went blank. The man's words struck her like a punch to the gut. Too late. Before she could react, another figure stepped out from behind the crates, this time holding a gun aimed directly at her. "Get on the ground," the voice commanded. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest, but she didn't move. She couldn't afford to show fear now. She had come this far. She wasn't going to let them stop her. Not now. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The man with the gun stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. "What do we want? We want you to stop. We want you to disappear, just like your father did. We've been watching you, Evelyn. You're in too deep." Evelyn's mind raced as she tried to find a way out, her body tense, ready for whatever was coming next. She had no choice but to fight back. She had come too far to let them win. Chapter 17, Shadows in the Dark. Evelyn's heart raced as she left the safe house, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the empty alley. The tension was suffocating, and every instinct in her screamed that danger was close. She wasn't safe anymore. The walls had closed in, and the shadows seemed to follow her wherever she went. She knew that the people behind this conspiracy weren't just going to let her walk away unscathed. They were coming for her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. It was the same number that had sent her the threatening texts earlier. "You're playing a dangerous game, Evelyn. You'll never finish this." Her hands tightened around the phone, but before she could respond, another message appeared. "You're too late. We've already made our move. The silent witness is ours." Evelyn froze. The silent witness. Marissa Davenport. The one person who held the key to everything. They had her. Her pulse quickened as panic surged through her. She had been so close. She had almost uncovered the full scope of the conspiracy. And now they had taken Marissa. The final piece. The key to everything. She had to act. She had no time to waste. Evelyn's mind raced with plans, each more dangerous than the last. She couldn't sit back and wait for them to come for her. She had to go after Marissa before it was too late. She had to find her. If they had her, then the stakes had just gotten higher. The conspiracy had moved faster than she anticipated, but that didn't mean it was over. As she made her way to the car, she knew she had to move quickly. The message was clear. They were onto her, and they weren't going to stop until they had eliminated the threat she posed. Evelyn slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, the sound of the car purring to life doing little to ease her racing thoughts. Her eyes scanned the streets, looking for any signs that she was being followed. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the world outside, making everything seem uncertain, just like her next move. Where was Marissa? Where had they taken her? Evelyn had a feeling she knew the answer. They had to be using her as leverage, hoping that Evelyn would back down. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when she was so close. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Samuel. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen before she answered. "Evelyn," Samuel's voice crackled through the line. "I know you're going after her, but you need to understand something. It's too late. They've already moved Marissa. We can't track her now." "No," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the static of the phone. "I'm not stopping. Not now. I'm going after her." Samuel sighed. "Evelyn, listen to me. You're walking into a trap. They want you to come after her. They'll use her to get to you. If you keep going, you won't make it out alive." Evelyn gripped the steering wheel harder, her knuckles turning white. I'm not backing down, Samuel. I won't let them get away with this. I'll find her, and I'll expose everything. You're putting yourself in danger. Don't do this, Samuel pleaded, his voice filled with urgency. But Evelyn was already past the point of no return. I have no choice. The call ended abruptly, and Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Samuel had been a part of this from the beginning, and now, his warning felt like one last attempt to stop her. She didn't need his protection anymore. She needed answers. Her mind raced with possibilities as she sped through the rain-soaked streets. The familiar landscape of the city, now a maze of shadows and uncertainty. She couldn't afford to waste time. Marissa was out there somewhere, and she needed to find her before it was too late. As she neared the outskirts of the city, the dark silhouette of a warehouse came into view, hidden in the distance, far from the prying eyes of the public. It was isolated, abandoned, the perfect place to keep someone hidden. Evelyn's gut twisted as she realized this could be it, the place where Marissa was being kept. She parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way, keeping to the shadows. Her heart raced with every step. This was it. If she didn't act now, she might never get another chance. The rain had stopped, but the air felt thick with tension. Every sound felt amplified, and every creak of the building seemed to echo through the silence. The warehouse loomed ahead, its dark, rusted exterior showing signs of neglect. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she approached the door. It was slightly ajar, as if waiting for her. She paused just outside, listening for any movement inside. Everything felt too still, too quiet. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make the first move. Evelyn stepped inside, her footfall muffled by the dusty floor. She squinted through the dim light, her eyes scanning the space. There were crates and piles of old equipment scattered around, but no sign of Marissa. The silence was suffocating. "Marissa?" she called out softly, her voice barely a whisper. No answer. Her pulse quickened as she stepped further into the room. The air felt colder now, and every inch of her skin tingled with the sense that something was wrong. It was too quiet. She shouldn't have come alone. She should have waited for backup. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Evelyn spun around, her heart racing in her chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim light. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the shadows. "I knew you would come," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "But it's too late." Evelyn's mind went blank. The man's words struck her like a punch to the gut. Too late. Before she could react, another figure stepped out from behind the crates, this time holding a gun aimed directly at her. "Get on the ground," the voice commanded. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest, but she didn't move. She couldn't afford to show fear now. She had come this far. She wasn't going to let them stop her. Not now. "What do you want?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The man with the gun stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. "What do we want? We want you to stop. We want you to disappear, just like your father did. We've been watching you, Evelyn. You're in too deep." Evelyn's mind raced as she tried to find a way out, her body tense, ready for whatever was coming next. She had no choice but to fight back. She had come too far to let them win. Chapter 18. The trap closes. The gun was trained on her, the cold metal of it glinting in the dim light of the warehouse. Evelyn's heart thudded in her chest, but she kept her stance steady. The man who had stepped from the shadows was tall, his face obscured by the low light, but there was something unmistakable about his presence. A feeling of finality, of inevitability, hung in the air. The man with the gun took another step closer, his boots echoing through the otherwise silent room. Evelyn didn't flinch, though every fiber of her being screamed to run. She was cornered, trapped, with no way out, but that didn't mean she had to go down without a fight. "You think you can just waltz in here and take down everything we've built?" the man said, his voice low and menacing. He didn't move the gun, keeping it trained on her chest. "You're far too naive, Evelyn." Evelyn's fingers twitched at her sides, her mind scrambling for a way to gain the upper hand. She had been here before, staring down danger with no clear path out. But this time, she was ready. She wasn't going to be manipulated or intimidated any longer. "I'm not naive," Evelyn said, her voice calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You've underestimated me. And that's your mistake." The man's lips curled into a dark smile. "We've been watching you, Evelyn. We know everything about you. About your father's investigation. About your little crusade. The truth is, you've always been a pawn. This whole game was never about exposing us. It was about using you to clean up our mess. And now you're out of control." Evelyn's mind raced as she processed his words. Using her to clean up their mess? This wasn't just about stopping her. She wasn't dealing with some criminal enterprise that wanted to cover its tracks. She was dealing with a shadow organization that had been running the game for years, pulling strings from the darkness. They had set her up, and they were about to finish what they started. Her pulse quickened. There had to be a way out of this. She couldn't let herself be caught now, not when she was so close. She had to find Marissa, the silent witness. She had to finish this. "I'm not your pawn," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength. "And you're not going to get away with this. Not anymore." The man with the gun stepped closer, but there was something about his movements that made Evelyn pause. He was careful, too careful. Like he had been told to keep her alive for some reason. It didn't make sense. Why let her live if she was such a threat to them? "Why haven't you killed me yet?" Evelyn asked, a sharp edge to her voice. She needed to know. "Why are you waiting?" The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced over at the other figure, the second person who had stepped into the room. She hadn't noticed him earlier, but now, as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw him clearly. He was wearing a black suit, his face smooth and emotionless. His gaze was calculating, cold. "You're not as valuable to us as you think," the first man said, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "But you're useful. You're a symbol. A warning. You'll do what we tell you. You'll stop digging, or we'll make sure everyone who's ever trusted you pays the price." Evelyn's stomach churned at his words. She had known she was in danger, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was fighting for her life, and for the lives of everyone who had been caught in the web of the conspiracy. "Who are you?" Evelyn asked, her voice tight with anger. "Who's pulling your strings?" The man with the gun didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the man in the black suit, who stepped forward, his cold eyes locking onto Evelyn's. His gaze was unnerving, and Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about him that was different. He wasn't just a part of the system. He was the system. "Don't waste your breath," the man in the black suit said, his voice smooth and calculated. "You won't get any answers from us. You've done your part, Evelyn. You've played your role. And now it's over." "No," Evelyn said, her voice hard, defiant. "It's not over. You've underestimated me. I'm going to take you down. Every last one of you." The man in the black suit chuckled softly, his smile cold. "You think you can expose us? You've already lost. There's no way out of this for you. You should have known better than to get involved in something you couldn't handle." But Evelyn wasn't listening to him anymore. As the second man stepped closer, Evelyn noticed something. His hand was in his pocket. A subtle movement, but enough for her to see that he was reaching for something. Now or never. In one swift motion, Evelyn lunged toward the man with the gun, her body acting on instinct. The gunshot that followed was deafening, but Evelyn didn't stop. She knocked the barrel aside just as it fired, the shot hitting the ceiling instead of her. The man stumbled back, surprised by her sudden move, but Evelyn didn't give him time to recover. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it violently, forcing the gun from his grip. The weapon clattered to the floor, out of reach. The other man, the mastermind, lunged toward her, but Evelyn was faster. She kicked out, sending him crashing to the ground, his body slamming against the crates. For a split second, she saw him scramble to reach for something hidden beneath his coat. But it was too late. The table had turned. Evelyn's training, her instinct, had kicked in. She wasn't going down without a fight. "Stay down," she hissed, pressing her foot into his chest, the reality of the situation sinking in. "Tell me where Marissa is. Now." The man's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and disbelief, but he didn't answer. He was too far gone in his own arrogance to see that Evelyn was no longer the prey. She was the predator. A sudden noise from behind her made her spin around. The man she had knocked down was already pulling himself to his feet, a smirk crossing his face as he reached into his jacket. But Evelyn was ready. She'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. In a split second, she drew the gun that had been tucked into her belt and aimed it directly at him. "Move and I'll kill you." Chapter 19. The Heart of the Beast. The barrel of the gun was steady in Evelyn's hand as she watched the two men on the ground. Their expressions were a mix of disbelief and fear, but there was no doubt in her mind that they had underestimated her. She wasn't the same woman who had started this journey, naive, searching for justice. Now she was something else. She was a fighter. and nothing, no one, was going to stand in her way. The man she had knocked to the ground struggled to his feet, but Evelyn's grip tightened on the gun. The tension in the room was thick, the silence deafening. She was in control now, but she knew that could change in an instant. "You're not going to get away with this," the man spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can just waltz in here and take us down? You're nothing but a pawn. A tool. You're already dead. It's over for you." Evelyn didn't flinch. She had heard it all before. Threats, intimidation, and now, as always, the cold arrogance of those who thought they were invincible. But she had learned something over the past few weeks. Invincible people didn't exist. Not anymore. "You don't get it," she said quietly, her voice calm but filled with a deadly edge. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of any of you." The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she saw a flicker of doubt. She pressed her advantage. "You're the ones who should be afraid. The game's over. You're not in control anymore." The man's gaze flickered to the other figure on the ground, and his lips curled into a smirk. "You think you're the one who's been playing the game? You're wrong. The ones behind this, they've been pulling the strings for years. You're nothing but a blip in their plan." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. She had suspected as much. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that the conspiracy wasn't just about one man or one group of corrupt officials. It was a far-reaching network, a cabal that had infiltrated every level of society. And now, the truth was within her grasp. But there was something else, something that gnawed at her. A question she hadn't been able to shake since the moment she discovered the full extent of the conspiracy. Who was behind all of this? She stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the man before her. Who's at the top? Who's really behind all of this? The man laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You still don't get it, do you? The ones at the top. They've been hiding in plain sight. They don't need to be exposed. They control everything. They control the courts, the media, the police. They've had their hands in every deal, every dirty operation. And you? You're just a tool. A pawn to them." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Who?" The man sneered. "You want to know who? Look around you, Evelyn. It's all connected. All of it. From your father's investigation to your own. They knew you'd come this far. They've been watching you. Every step. Every move. And they let you. They let you think you could win." Evelyn's grip on the gun tightened. "Who is it? Who's really pulling the strings?" The man laughed again, but this time it was laced with something darker. "You've been so focused on Calloway, so focused on the small pieces of this puzzle, that you've missed the bigger picture. The people you trust, the ones you thought were on your side, they've been working for them all along." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "The truth is, Evelyn, the ones who've been controlling everything, they're right in front of you. You've known them all along." Her heart skipped a beat. "Who?" He smirked, his eyes gleaming with the kind of satisfaction that only comes from knowing you're about to crush someone's world. "The ones who've been controlling everything? The ones who've been playing the game? It's the system itself, Evelyn. It's the government. The very institutions you've worked for. It's the people who make the rules. The ones who decide who gets to win and who gets to lose. They've been behind this all along." Evelyn's mind reeled. The government? The very institutions that she had dedicated her life to serving? She had always known there was corruption in the system. But this? This was something else entirely. The lines between good and evil had blurred beyond recognition. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice shaky with disbelief. The man's smile widened. "Am I? Look at the evidence. Look at who's been pulling the strings. The people you trust. The ones who have controlled this entire operation. They've been hiding in plain sight, and they've been laughing at you every step of the way." Evelyn's world began to shift. She had thought she was uncovering the truth, but now she realized the truth was much darker than she had imagined. The conspiracy was larger than just one corrupt businessman. It was a machine, an unstoppable force that had been in place for years, and she was just a small cog in it. She turned on her heel, her mind racing. The government, the system, it was all connected. The very institutions she had worked for, the ones she had trusted, were complicit in this web of deceit. But she couldn't back down. Not now. She had to expose them. All of them. As she moved toward the door, the man's voice echoed behind her. "You can't win, Evelyn. It's too late for you. You'll never take them down. They control everything." Evelyn didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. The truth was within reach. She had come this far, and now there was no turning back. "Watch me," she whispered, her voice steady. She stepped into the night, the cold air biting at her skin, but she didn't feel it. All she could feel was the fire in her chest, the unrelenting drive to finish what she had started. She had already lost everything: her father, her career, her friends. But she wasn't going to let them take her spirit. Not now. She would take down the entire network. She would expose the people who had orchestrated this conspiracy, no matter the cost. Chapter 20. The truth comes crashing down. Evelyn's breath came in shallow gasps as she walked through the rain-soaked streets, the weight of everything she had uncovered pressing down on her. The conspiracy had been much larger than she could have ever imagined. She had thought she was fighting a few corrupt businessmen and politicians, but it was clear now, the enemy was much more powerful. It wasn't just one group. It was the very institutions that had been built to protect the public. The government, law enforcement, the judicial system, all of it had been corrupted. Her mind was still reeling from the revelation that the ones pulling the strings were right in front of her all along. She had suspected that the conspiracy was deep, but she had never imagined it went all the way to the top. The people she had trusted, the ones who had shaped her career, had been playing both sides. They had used her, manipulated her, and now they were coming for her. But Evelyn wasn't going to back down. She had lost too much to walk away now. The truth was within her grasp, and she wasn't going to let them take it away. She arrived at her destination, a small, nondescript building in the heart of the city. This was where it would all come to a head. The safe house that Samuel had mentioned had once been a refuge, a place where she could hide and plan her next move. But now, it felt like the last place she wanted to be. The calm before the storm was over. She had waited long enough. It was time to bring this conspiracy to light. Evelyn took a deep breath and walked inside, her steps echoing through the empty hallway. She didn't expect anyone to be waiting for her, but her instincts told her to be cautious. They were watching her. She could feel it in the air, the constant tension that never seemed to fade. She reached the door of the room Samuel had told her to meet him in. Her hand hovered over the doorknob, but something didn't feel right. It was too quiet, too still. She pushed the door open, her heart pounding in her chest. Samuel wasn't there. The room was empty, but something was off. The air was thick with an unsettling sense of danger. She stepped inside cautiously, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the situation. The papers and documents Samuel had given her were scattered across the desk, but there was no sign of him. No indication of where he had gone. Evelyn's fingers brushed over the papers, her mind still processing the conversations she had had with Samuel. Had he truly been on her side, or was he just another piece in the game? The fear crept up her spine again, but she shook it off. She didn't have time for second-guessing. A sudden movement behind her snapped her out of her thoughts. She turned quickly, her hand instinctively reaching for the gun tucked in her waistband. But it wasn't Samuel. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a tall man with dark eyes that glinted with malice. Evelyn recognized him instantly, the man who had been watching her, the one who had warned her to stop digging. "You shouldn't have come," the man said, his voice low and cold. "You're in over your head." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting him. She had known he was involved in the conspiracy, but now that he was standing in front of her, she realized just how close she had come to the truth. The people behind this weren't just criminals. They were the very people who were supposed to protect the public. They were untouchable, and they were about to silence her. "I'm not afraid of you," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She had come too far to back down now. "I know what you're doing. I know everything." The man's lips curled into a smile, though it was more of a sneer. "You don't know anything. You've been playing their game, and now you're just a pawn. You've made a lot of noise, but you're nothing but a nuisance." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the grip of the gun, but she didn't raise it. Not yet. She had to stay calm. She had to think this through. She had learned how to play the game, and now she was going to win. "I know you're part of it," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I know you've been pulling the strings, but I'm going to expose you. I'm going to expose all of you." The man's smile faded, his expression turning hard. "You're already too late. The truth isn't going to set you free. It's going to bury you. They'll come for you, Evelyn. You can't fight this. You can't win." Evelyn didn't flinch. She had heard this before. They had tried to break her, tried to intimidate her. But they had underestimated her. She was no longer the woman who had walked into this investigation with only a sense of justice and naivety. She had learned to fight. She had learned how to survive. And now, she was ready for the final showdown. I've already won, Evelyn said quietly, her voice filled with cold determination. You think you've got control? You think you can scare me into silence? You're wrong. I've been digging into the truth for too long to stop now. The man's eyes darkened as he took a step toward her, his voice low and threatening. You don't understand. You're nothing. Just a small piece of the puzzle. You can't defeat us. We're everywhere. Evelyn's heart was steady as she raised the gun, pointing it directly at him. Her hand didn't shake. Her resolve didn't waver. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had come too far to turn back now. I'm not afraid of you, she repeated. And I will expose everything you've done. You've taken everything from me, but I'm taking it back. The man's expression faltered for just a second, but it was enough. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She knew what she had to do.